everyone. Welcome back to Practice English TV. I'm Mark, and I'm really glad you're here with us today.
And I'm Emma. Thanks for joining us. Maybe you're relaxing right now, or maybe you're trying to improve your English, step by step.
You know, I was thinking about something very simple, but also kind of stressful for a lot of people.
Yeah, have you ever stood in a supermarket, looking around, and suddenly you didn't know what to say?
Or you wanted to ask a question, but you weren't sure how to say it in English.
Even something small, like asking for milk or understanding the cashier, can feel a little uncomfortable.
That's exactly what we're talking about today. Shopping at the supermarket.
We're going to walk through real situations, simple conversations, and useful phrases that you can actually use.
Just listen and enjoy. You don't need to understand every word.
Yeah, just stay with us and let's go through it together, step by step.
So, think about the last time you went to a supermarket. It's usually a simple trip, right? You grab a basket, walk around, pick a few things, and then pay.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but honestly, it can feel very different when everything around you is in English. Even reading labels can take more time.
That's true. I remember when I first went grocery shopping in another country, I stood in front of the milk section for like 5 minutes.
Oh no, why?
There were so many types: whole milk, skim milk, almond milk. I didn't even know what skim milk meant at the time.
Yeah, that can be confusing. Even native speakers sometimes stop and think.
And then there's the layout of the store. Things are not always where you expect them to be.
Exactly. You might think bread is near the entrance, but sometimes it's all the way in the back. So you end up walking around looking a little lost.
Let's imagine a simple situation. You walk into a supermarket and you want to buy eggs, bread, and some fruit.
Okay, but you don't know where anything is, so what do you do?
Maybe you walk around quietly at first, hoping to find it yourself?
Yeah, I do that all the time. I don't want to ask for help too quickly.
Same here. But after a few minutes, you might think, okay, I need help.
So you see an employee, but then you hesitate. You're thinking, how do I ask this in English?
Right. Even a simple question like, where are the eggs, can feel a bit scary if you're not confident.
Here's another small situation. You finally find the eggs, but there are different sizes and brands.
Oh yeah, like large eggs, medium eggs, organic eggs.
And you're just standing there, trying to decide and maybe reading everything slowly.
I've definitely been there. Sometimes I just pick one quickly and move on.
Same. Sometimes you don't want to spend too much time thinking.
Another thing is the self-checkout machines. Those can be a little stressful too.
Oh, yes, you scan an item and then suddenly the machine says something and you're like, wait, what did it say?
Yeah, and then there's a line behind you and you feel a little pressure.
Exactly. You start moving faster and then you might make a small mistake.
So even though supermarket shopping is a very normal activity, it can have a lot of small challenges when you're using English.
But the good thing is, these situations are very common. That means once you learn a few key phrases, everything becomes much easier.
And that's what we're going to do today. We'll go step by step, just like a real shopping experience.
Yeah, from entering the store to asking for help to paying at the end.
So don't worry if you've ever felt confused or nervous in a supermarket.
You're definitely not alone, and by the end of this episode, you'll feel a lot more comfortable.
All right, let's keep going and talk about some real-life experiences. You know, something interesting happened to me a while back at a supermarket. It was a small thing, but it felt very awkward at the time.
That already sounds like a good story. What happened?
So I was looking for butter, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I checked near the milk, near the bread, nothing.
That's already stressful. Butter should be easy to find.
Exactly. So I finally asked an employee. I said, "Excuse me, where is the butter?" But I was a little nervous, so I spoke kind of fast.
And did they understand you?
Not at first. They said, "Sorry?" And then I repeated it, but I think I pronounced it a bit wrong.
Oh no.
Yeah, it sounded like I said batter, like for pancakes.
That's actually kind of funny.
So the employee looked confused for a second and then said, "Oh, butter," and pointed me to the fridge section.
At least they figured it out.
Yeah, but for a moment I felt really embarrassed. It was such a simple word.
I think that happens to everyone. Even small pronunciation differences can cause confusion.
Here's another situation. I was at the checkout and the cashier asked me, "Do you need a bag?"
That's a very common question.
Yeah, but I didn't hear it clearly. I thought she said something else, so I just said, "Yes."
That's always a risky answer.
Exactly. And then she gave me 3 bags.
3?
Yeah, I only had a few items. I didn't need that many.
That's such a classic moment. You say yes, and then you realize maybe that wasn't the right answer.
Right, and I didn't know how to fix it, so I just accepted the bags.
I've had something similar. One time, I was buying fruit, and the cashier asked me something about membership or points.
Oh yeah, like a store card.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't understand the question fully, so I just smiled and said, no, thank you.
Safe answer.
Very safe. But then I realized later I might have missed a discount.
That happens a lot. Sometimes we choose comfort over understanding.
Let's imagine another small situation. You're at the fruit section and you want to buy apples.
Okay, but you don't know if you should take a bag or weigh them first.
Exactly. So you look around and you see other people doing different things.
Some people put apples in a bag first, some weigh them right away. It gets confusing.
So you just copy someone nearby.
Yeah, that's a classic strategy.
Here's one more. You go to the deli section and want to buy some sliced meat.
Oh, that can be challenging.
The person behind the counter asks, how much would you like?
And you're thinking, grams? Pieces? I don't know.
Exactly. And then you panic a little and just say, a little.
A little is not very helpful.
No, not at all. But in that moment, it feels like the easiest answer.
All these simple situations are small, but they feel very real when you're there.
And the important thing is, it's okay to feel confused sometimes.
Yeah, learning a language includes these awkward and funny moments.
And later, they become good stories.
Exactly. And now, let's slow things down a bit and look at some useful words you'll hear in a supermarket. You know, when you go to a supermarket often, you start to notice the same words again and again.
Yeah, and after a while, those words just feel normal. You don't even think about them anymore.
Let's start right at the entrance. The first thing you usually grab is a basket or a cart.
A basket is the small one you carry. A cart is the bigger one you push around the store.
Most people just decide quickly without thinking too much. A few items take a basket. A lot of items take a cart.
And then you walk in and you start seeing different sections. This is where things can feel a little confusing at first.
Yeah, but once you hear these names a few times, they become really easy.
For example, the produce section. That's where all the fruits and vegetables are.
You'll see things like apples, bananas, carrots. Pretty basic stuff, but you'll hear these words all the time.
Then there's the dairy section. This is another very common one.
Milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, all in the same area. Once you know this, it saves you a lot of time.
Here's a small situation. You're looking for eggs, but you're not sure where they are.
Instead of walking around for too long, you just ask, "Excuse me, where are the eggs?"
Simple, clear, and people understand you right away.
Another area you'll hear about is the bakery section.
That's where you find bread, cakes, and pastries. It usually smells really nice, too.
And then there's the frozen food section. You'll see frozen vegetables, ice cream, and ready meals.
You don't need to remember everything at once. Just hearing these words again and again really helps.
Now, here's something you'll see everywhere: price tags.
Yeah, every item has a price tag, and sometimes you'll also see signs like sale or discount.
When something is on sale, it just means it's cheaper than usual.
Here's a quick situation. You see a sign that says, buy one, get one free.
That means if you buy one item, you get another one for free. A lot of people like these deals.
Now, let's move closer to the end of your shopping trip.
The checkout area is where everything happens quickly.
The person there is called a cashier, and you'll hear the same questions again and again.
Things like, do you need a bag? Or cash or card?
At first, these might feel fast, but after a few times, you'll recognize them immediately.
Here's another small moment. You didn't understand what the cashier said.
Instead of guessing, you can just say, "Sorry, can you repeat that?"
Or, sorry, I didn't catch that. People say this all the time.
And honestly, that's part of real communication. Even native speakers ask people to repeat things.
Exactly. You don't need perfect understanding. You just need to stay relaxed and keep going.
And the more you hear these words in real situations, the more natural everything will feel.
All right, now let's put everything together and go through a full conversation. Let's imagine we're walking into a supermarket together. It's a normal day and we just need to buy a few things.
Okay, sounds good. What do we need today?
Let's say we need milk, eggs, some apples, and maybe bread.
All right, that's a simple list. So first, we walk in and grab a basket.
Yeah, not too many things today, so a basket is enough.
Now we're looking around. I see signs, but I'm not sure where the milk is.
Same here. I think it might be in the back, but I'm not completely sure.
Let's walk a little. Maybe we can find it ourselves first.
Okay, we passed the snacks, the drinks. Oh, here's the dairy section.
Great, we found the milk. But wait, there are so many options.
Yeah, whole milk, low-fat milk, almond milk.
I always pause here. I never know which one to choose.
Same. Sometimes I just stand there a bit too long, like I'm studying the milk.
Yeah, and people walk by you and you feel like you should decide faster.
All right, let's just pick one and move on.
Okay, milk is done. Now we need eggs.
Eggs should be nearby, right?
I think so, but I don't see them.
Let's check one more aisle.
Still nothing. Okay, maybe we should ask someone.
Yeah, good idea. I see an employee over there.
All right, I'll ask. Excuse me, where are the eggs?
And the employee says, they're right behind you.
Oh no, that's always a little embarrassing.
Yeah, you turn around and they're right there.
But it's okay. At least now we know.
All right, we grab a box of eggs. Now let's get some apples.
We go to the produce section. Everything looks fresh, which is nice.
Yeah, but now we have another small problem. Do we need to weigh the apples first?
I'm not sure. I see some people putting them in a bag first.
Let's just do the same thing. That's usually a safe choice.
Okay, we put a few apples in a bag.
Now bread. That should be easy.
We find the bakery section quickly. There are so many types of bread.
White bread, whole wheat, multigrain.
I always take a moment here, too, not because it's hard, but because there are too many choices.
Yeah, sometimes having too many options makes it harder to decide.
All right, we pick one and head to the checkout.
Now we're standing in line, waiting our turn.
This is usually the moment where I quickly check everything again in my basket.
Same, just to make sure I didn't forget anything.
Now it's our turn. The cashier starts scanning the items.
They say, do you need a bag?
You say, yes, please.
Then they ask, cash or card?
You say, card.
You tap your card and wait.
Sometimes I get a little nervous here, like, did it work?
Yeah, you just stand there for a second, waiting for the machine to respond.
And then finally it says, approved, and you feel relieved.
You take your receipt, your bag, and you're done.
That's it, a full supermarket trip step by step.
And when you go through it like this, it actually feels much simpler.
Yeah, it's just a series of simple, small interactions.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
All right, now let's continue and look at some useful phrases you can use in these situations.
Now let's go over some useful phrases you can use when you're shopping at a supermarket. These are simple, natural, and very common in everyday situations.
Yeah, and the goal here is not to memorize everything perfectly, but to get familiar with how people actually speak.
Let's start with asking for help. This is something you will probably need at some point.
A very common way to begin is, "Excuse me."
Right. For example, excuse me, where can I find the milk?
Or, "Excuse me, where are the eggs?"
Both are polite and very natural.
Here's a small situation. You're looking for bread, but you can't find it anywhere.
So you ask, excuse me, where can I find bread?
And the employee might say, "It's in aisle 5.
That brings us to another important word, aisle.
An aisle is a long row in the supermarket, usually with shelves on both sides.
Now let's talk about understanding directions.
You might hear something like, "It's on your left," or "It's at the back of the store."
If you don't understand, you can say, sorry, can you show me?
That's very natural and totally okay.
Let's look at another situation. You want to check the price of something.
You can ask, "How much is this?"
Or if you're pointing at something, you can simply say, how much is this one?
Now imagine you're at the meat or deli section.
The staff might ask, how much would you like?
You can answer with something simple like, "Just a little," or "About 200 grams."
Even a basic answer is fine. The important thing is to communicate.
Now let's move to the checkout area.
The cashier might ask, do you need a bag?
You can say, "Yes, please," or "No, thank you."
Another common question is cash or card.
You can answer, "Card, please," or "I'll pay with cash."
Here's a small situation. You didn't hear the cashier clearly.
You can say, "Sorry, can you repeat that?"
Or, sorry, I didn't catch that.
These phrases are very useful and very natural.
Let's look at one more situation. Something feels wrong with your purchase.
Maybe the price looks too high.
You can say, I think this is the wrong price.
Or, "Can you check this for me?"
Both are polite and clear.
Another helpful phrase is, "Can I use a card here?"
This is useful if you're not sure about the payment method.
And if you're at a self-checkout and something goes wrong, you can say, "Can someone help me?"
Very simple, but very effective.
The key idea is that you don't need long or complicated sentences.
Short, clear phrases work perfectly in most situations.
And people are usually very understanding, even if your English is not perfect.
Exactly. Communication is more important than perfection.
All right, let's finish with a few simple tips and a natural way to practice what you learned today.
Before we finish, let's go over a few simple ideas that can really help you feel more comfortable in a supermarket.
Yeah, nothing complicated, just small things you can actually use the next time you go shopping.
First, give yourself time. You don't have to understand everything immediately.
You can pause, look around, and think. That's completely normal.
Here's a small situation. You're at the checkout and the cashier says something quickly.
Instead of guessing, you take a breath and say, "Sorry, can you repeat that?"
That one sentence makes a big difference. It keeps the situation clear and simple.
Another helpful idea is to focus on a few key phrases.
You don't need a lot, just a few, like, excuse me, can you help me, or how much is this?
You'll notice that people use these phrases again and again in real life.
Here's another situation. You're looking for something, but you can't find it after a few minutes.
Instead of walking around longer and feeling more unsure, you ask for help early.
That small action can make your whole experience easier and more relaxed.
Now let's talk about practice, because that's where real progress happens.
You don't need a perfect environment. You can practice in simple ways.
For example, the next time you're in a supermarket, try to think in English for a few seconds.
Look at something and say in your mind, I need milk, or where are the eggs?
Or even imagine asking a question, just quietly in your head.
These small moments build confidence over time.
Now here's something we'd like you to try.
Think about your last supermarket trip.
What did you buy?
And was there a moment where you felt unsure, even just a little?
Try to answer in English, even if it's very simple.
You can say something like, I bought fruit and bread, or I didn't understand one question.
That's already real practice. That's already progress.
And next time you go to a supermarket, don't try to say everything perfectly.
Just try one sentence, one small interaction.
Maybe you ask, where are the eggs? Or can you help me?
And that one moment, that's how real improvement starts.
Step by step, it becomes easier.
And one day, you'll walk into a supermarket and not feel nervous at all.
It will just feel normal.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
We really hope this helped you feel a little more confident.
Take care, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode.